All right. Hello, everybody. We are here. All right. Seeing some people joining, so welcome everybody to our climate tech panel today. We're so happy to have amazing minds today with us. I'm Gabriella Gabs. I'm from Cake. I'm the community manager. And we're so happy to be talking about this really hot topic today. We got Yas, she's in Brisbane. Camille, she is also in Brisbane. Mick is in Sydney. Steve is in Singapore. And Charlotte is in Sydney as well. So we've got people everywhere. And to turn this even more interactive, if you guys want to just pop in the chat where you also watching from, that would be really cool to see where you guys are watching and who is actually watching us today. If you also want to talk about who you are, if you're a co-founder, if you're an investor, anything that you're working with, it will be really cool to see who is watching us today. I'll give you a couple of minutes for everyone to join. So also we do have Charlotte. She's at Fishburn and she got some people there to ask some questions. And we want to do this as most interactive as possible. So if you do have questions for our panelists, please feel free to pop in the Q&A session and also on the chat if you want to. And we'll be happy to answer for you today. So Charlotte, I'm going to pass over to you. And guys, I'll be happy to answer some questions in the chat if you do have questions about Cake as well.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Gabby. And I am Charlotte, or some people call me Chachi or Charlie as well. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land which we meet. For me, today, that's the Gadigal people. It's usually the Gubbi Gubbi people. I'm based on the Sunshine Coast, but I'm really excited to be back here in Gadigal land. And I would pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and acknowledge their connection to country. So this is, like Gabby said, an incredibly hot topic. Climate tech investment is flowing into it 5 times faster than any other sector. It's what has all the VCs excited, but it's also for those hardcore planet protectors out there, even more so excited. We have an incredible brains trust in the panel here, and I probably won't do as much justice to your introductions as you would yourself. Yas, our inaugural Woman in Climate Tech for 2021 winner with Climate Salad. Yas, would you like to introduce yourself and just your North Star with your company?
Yeah, thank you. I come from Turrbal and you're a country today here in Brisbane, and am honoured to be here. I feel like I'm sitting amongst royalty of our industry, and you know, as the CEO and founder of the world's biggest garage sale, pitching climate tech and impact 5 or 6 years ago, I looked like the crazy one. And today I'm just so grateful to have some incredible people both pushing and pulling the industry forward. Our business is all about circular economy. And as a social enterprise, we interlace and have always had impact as our foundation. So we're tackling waste or resources through product stewardship. And recently, really proud to announce that we closed an investment round with Officeworks as one of our lead investors. So it's pretty awesome to see the momentum forward. And I'm really glad I quit my job 5 years ago and went all in, because I'd be having some serious FOMO right now if I didn't. So I'm certainly here to talk from a founder's perspective, and honoured to have Mick, one of my first ever founder mentors, sitting alongside us today.
So great to have you in the community, Yas. Camille, you have some exciting news as well, that obviously you go into your introduction and your incredible company that you founded and is launched this week.
That's right. Thank you so much for having me. Likewise, very honored to be here today. So my name is Camille. I'm the founder of Bloom Impact Investing. Bloom Impact Investing makes climate impact investing easy and accessible. So we want more people to put their money where their values are, and open up the access to impactful investments in clean energy for all Australians. I'm also very passionate about green finance and sustainable finance in general, which led me to sit on the sustainability panel for Gateway Bank. Very important for me to drive systemic change around how we use finance to drive sustainability outcomes. So that's the scene, and like you said, very exciting week for me. We've just launched Bloom publicly yesterday, so it's all available online on the App Store, and there will be further activities this week. But today is a great day for me to join.
Wonderful. It's so great to have you, Camille. And your passion for green finance flows very nicely into the next panelist. Steve, would you like to introduce yourself and your and Wavemaker, which you founded as well?
Sure. So I feel like I should be announcing something big today, like everybody else is, but I'll try and think about something. So yeah, I'm Steve. I'm in Singapore. I guess first and foremost, I'm an entrepreneur. I've founded and built 4 businesses over the last 25 years in Europe and also in Asia. Been living in Singapore for about 17 years. About 10 years of that was consumed about building my last startup, which was a kind of similar to realestate.com.au, but for Southeast Asia. So a company called Property Guru. And I ran that and built that from 2 people to about 1,500 staff over about 10 years. And then we just took the company public on the New York Stock Exchange 10 days ago, which was a super surreal experience.
What do you mean you need an announcement? That's a pretty good announcement.
I was going to say the same thing.
I'm going to think today.
Oh, today, yeah.
What about today?
That's a flex.
What have you done lately?
Yeah, so 2018, I decided to kind of hand over the CEO roles. I hired a CEO and handed over the day-to-day operations, but I remain on the board of Property Guru. And so 2018 for me was a big year, as sort of everywhere I seemed to look, climate change and the climate change drum was beating louder and louder and louder. And the more I researched it, the more scared I got, and particularly for the future of my kids. And so I thought, what do I spend my time and money and energy on? And there's nothing more important than climate change. And so I wanted to be able to look my kids in the eye and say, look, I played a tiny part in trying to do my thing for climate change. And so I had been angel investing for about 20 years, but I started to then in 2018 focus all my attention on climate tech and climate founders addressing climate change. And so I invested in 20 companies over the last 4 years. I've been working very closely with some of those founders who are building these businesses, trying to help address some of the challenges that they're facing. I very quickly realized I couldn't really do this at scale if it's just me and my money and my time. And so in 2021 came together with 4 other founding partners who are entrepreneurs, people who've been doing venture building in the renewable energy space for the last 3 or 4 years and built 10 ventures there, and also one of the leading VCs in Southeast Asia called Wavemaker Partners. And so the 5 partners came together to launch Wavemaker Impact. And Wavemaker Impact is a venture build impact fund which aims to crazily reduce 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions over the next 15 years. Yeah, happy to be here.
Thanks so much, Steve. And it's so great to have you on the panel. Mick, you're founder in yourself. Yeah. Go for it.
Well, luckily I have a good connection to everyone here. My brief life story is been in tech my whole life, building out products, companies, mainly launching Aussie companies in the US. Moved to the US. Started a program called Pollinizer, of which a Wavemaker partners were an investor actually, and then was the entrepreneur residence in Muridi, where I got to work with Yaz and about 200 other good companies. That took me to the US, where I started to get my climate. Well, I did the same thing as Steve. I read a couple of books, read some reports, and went. And as a dad of 3 kids, went, oh my goodness, and have decided to commit the next 20 years of my life to solving as many of those problems as I can. I came back to Australia about 2.5 years ago and saw very similar signs to the tech community 15 years ago, where there was good people doing projects, a bit of capital, a lot of passionate entrepreneurs, but no, the village around them wasn't strong enough yet. And that's what we're doing with Climate Salad, is just trying to build that village up as quickly as we can. Mentors, investors, scientists, researchers, designers, all the different parts we need to grow this ecosystem out. And that's where I got to meet Camille, which has been wonderful. We had a couple of good interactions, and hopefully an early customer. My North Star is to, we want to deeply help 1,000 climate tech companies in Australia and New Zealand get a team member, a customer, or a investor by 2030. So that's our crazy goal.
And I realise I probably should have introduced myself a little better. I'm Charlotte Connell, Head of Engagement at Climate Salad, but I also moonlight as a sustainability EIR at Fishburners, which I'm kind of bringing the round table here for the for-purpose businesses that are residents here. I'd like, because this is such an emerging field, I'd love to hear from the panel, what do you see as climate tech?
I'm happy to start off, because I remember, in fact, I just had our first, we just had a board meeting the other day, and ironically, maybe by accident and by chance, it happened in the same room, identically to the room I pitched the business to in 2018 for the very first ever investment. So it was $100,000 through the accelerator, which Mick was a mentor in, and River City Labs, Miri D, were all putting their money together to invest in 8 companies. And I tell this story all the time. Steve Baxter said, "What the hell are you doing here? You're not a tech founder." And it was true. I'm not a tech founder. And that's really the box I was in. Here I was running a company called the World's Biggest Garage Sale. We'd had hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue. We were pre-funding. It was all started as a hobby. And until someone said, you got to quit your job, go all in and build this as a business. And so off I went. When you get told what to do, I'm very coachable. So I went in and did what I was told and pitched the business, to learn that I apparently wasn't a tech founder. And so for me, what is climate tech? Well, climate tech is not necessarily the two words melded together into the bias of what we think those words mean based on the dictionary. I think climate tech companies, any company out there tackling what really is the biggest opportunity for all of us in this world, which is to try to slow and reverse the impact of everything that's destroying our planet. Whether you are focusing on technology, whether you are moving stuff around like we do, regardless of what your business looks like and feels like, if you are tackling sustainability, SDGs, these are genuinely the challenge we are here to solve. If you're going to build a business today, go and study the SDGs and build a business that's tackling a real world problem that we together as a human race need to challenge together. And so in that room, when I said, of course, I'm a founder building a product that's worth investing in, and consequently we got the investment, which was excellent, it catapulted me to realize that a founder, a co-founder, an entrepreneur can be anything that they believe that they can be. But if you've got the vision and the mission and the integrity and the capability, then it doesn't matter whether you fit in a box. I think that climate tech is a kaleidoscope of an opportunity. It's not a box. And I think climate tech means we are not boxed in founders and entrepreneurs, investors and community, building problems, solving problems and building products that can be anything within that sphere of color.
I think you need a round of applause for that answer, actually. Absolutely. Decarbonisation touches every element of the economy, but there's also a really important piece there too, is that adaptation and resilience that the world is changing, has changed. We've seen it. So we also have to adapt to it, which is a depressing thought, but one that can save lives. Like in the example of FloodMap, which is also based in Brisbane. Mick, you're nodding your head a lot, and Steve, as an investor, what do you look for in terms of attractive climate tech companies?
Mick, you want to make a start then?
Well, I think there's a really big gap, I think, not gap necessarily, but they don't necessarily have to overline in terms of what climate tech is as a category. And I think Gaz is right. My view is anything that can solve climate problems at scale. And scarily, I think to your point, Charlotte, we actually don't know fully how to, we don't fully understand, let alone define the full ramifications of climate problems. And I crazily decided to go back to university and study Masters of Sustainable Development. And just every single session I do, I realize how much I don't know, but trust millions of scientists out there. So it is pretty big and complicated. I think as well, going to Steve's point about having impact, and this is interesting to think about Camille's business, is I look at a range of things I can do to help companies. It's had the same problem. There's no way I can invest in all the companies. There's no way I can physically help them. I'm not smart enough to even understand half of them. But so I try to do things that facilitate companies, like, you know, again, creating climate starters. Like, I have no idea about nuclear fusion, but here are 5 people who do. Go and maybe you can help each other. Then there's a small amount of companies that I can help, and that's are they solving a big climate problem, and have they done? Are they about to face problems that I've solved previously? In my experience, have they built a team, built a product, gone and got customers, and raised early capital? So a lot of those things are quite similar, and that's what I look for in investments. I also recognize that I'm am no better than the average person. Well, no better than the best investors in investing, or in picking the best. So you've got to have diversity in both founders and problems and approaches. So I try to build a diverse portfolio. But the vast majority of it is building relationships. It's I've never invested in a company other than in AngelList syndicates, right? Other real investments I've never invested in with less than 10 meetings, normally 12 to 15 or 20. And you want to really, really get to know the people, because you're going into a long-term relationship with them, and you need to like them as much as they like you. And so that's what I look for. Steve?
Thanks, Mick. Well, first of all, I think I just want to applaud Yaz. I think on that first response, I think that should be the, take some quotes from that, I think, for the summary of the event. I think with my investor hat on, I think looking at climate tech opportunities, many of the fundamentals apply for looking at any technology or venture grade opportunity. I think in terms of the market size, in terms of the sort of traction of the traction and go to market and product market fit, all that kind of stuff is all kind of applies. But I think what's specific for me when I look at climate tech, and I guess this is learning the hard way over the last sort of 3 or 4 years, is first of all, I think focusing on the pain and the problem that's being solved, which sounds really, really obvious. But I think, one of the challenges I've had is working with a whole bunch of founders who are super passionate about solving climate or social impact problems. And I love that, and I'm just drawn to that. But at the same time, what I now also realize is customers, to be honest, don't give a shit today about sustainability. They might say it, they might be publicizing things, but very few are actually making decisions based purely on sustainability. Unfortunately, that is the case, particularly as in Southeast Asia. And so when I look at climate tech businesses, I'm looking at businesses that are solving real business problems. Whether it's 8 million smallholder farmers sitting in Southeast Asia who are contributing 25% of greenhouse gas emissions for Southeast Asia. They don't know that they're doing that, but they are. How can we help them? And then they're living hand to mouth. But they care about money, income, and they care about costs. And so, can we, develop solutions that, for example, will reduce their costs, increase their yield, increase their productivity, increase the number of crops that they're producing at a better price. And the byproduct of that is less emissions. And so, our first company, Wavemaker Impact, is around that. And so we think about, solving real business problems, which is basically how do you get more customers? How do you increase revenue? How do you reduce cost? How do you improve productivity? And if you can solve some of these business problems with a sustainable solution, then the byproduct of that is less emissions at scale. And so that you remove a lot of the friction points to adoption. So I think understanding the business challenges. And so with Wavemaker Impact, one of the things we spend a lot of time on is really understanding, okay, for smallholder farmers, for SME factories, for construction companies, what are their challenges and how can we address that through sustainable solutions? And I think the next thing that we look at is, look, we need to reduce emissions by 50% in the next 10 years, actually less than 10 years. And using rocket science, new technology is going to help in the next 20 to 30 years because it'll take time for that to adopt. So what existing technology can we use? So in other words, can we adapt a lithium-ion battery to a particular use case? Can we take IoT sensors and hardware and software as a service kind of solutions and apply it to solving a problem, which removes a lot of the friction points? One of the companies I'm working with is an energy efficiency company, and it just uses basic IoT hardware and a little bit of AI software to learn around F&B outlets, and helps F&B outlets reduce their energy costs by 30%, which is of course very important for an F&B outlet, particularly in sort of the COVID world. And the byproduct of that, of course, is 30%, pretty much 30% less fossil fuels being emitted as a result of less fossil fuel energy being consumed by the F&B outlet. And as a result, to the fact that the customer does not actually pay anything up front, they just share on the energy costs that are saved. This company's gone from 1 to 10 to 50 to 100 and now approaching 1,000 F&B outlets in the last sort of 12 months or so. So growing super fast. And so we're looking at how can we remove friction points using existing technology to start to shift the needle really in the next sort of 10 years or so.
Connell, you have just made it much more accessible for everyone to access impact investing, but this, and I guess we're all covering this, like how do we measure that impact? What are the metrics, or how do you even approach it as someone who has not been able to impact invest before until they've dabbled with Bloom app?
This is such a great question, and I think everyone who has seriously looked into impact knows how difficult it is. And actually, I'm just going to link this question that you asked with what has been said before. It will all make sense in a minute. When we look at impact, I agree with two words that have been said before by different speakers. So we're talking about scale, and I think it's important to remember that a lot of solutions already exist. I think at first glance, some people might think then that clean tech is all about inventing new things, but in a lot of cases, solving the climate crisis is all about solutions we already have. But my point is to look at impact. We had a huge amount of work to do at Bloom, and to be honest, we haven't solved the quantifiable metrics of impact, but we've sort of flipped the problem on its head. So instead of picking things and then measuring afterwards, we picked a scientific model to start with. So we've looked at Project Drawdown and ClimateWorks, which are two scientific models that have mapped our transition towards net zero. These models aren't perfect, but they are a starting point, as many models. And they give you, for each specific industry or solution, how much gigatons of CO2 can we save if we implement this solution by 2035 or 2050. And you'll find surprising things there, like cement, dynamic glass, energy efficiency, insulation, like simple things that we already know, but we need to invest and go further with those. So we've took these solutions, we've took these models and these quantifiable metrics, and we've matched those with our investments. Now, quantifying our impact is complex. We have an output, so we know how much clean energy we are going to produce, but how do you count the divestment from fossil fuels to clean energy? How do you measure additionality? So how much of your investment have enabled something to happen that would have not otherwise happened without your investment? This is the tricky bit. And this is the difference between investing in shares. So let's say you invest in Tesla, awesome, exciting, but to be honest, Tesla doesn't really need your money. It's already up and running. You're not making a huge impact. However, when you invest in an early stage company, this is really making an impact. Or when you invest in a solar farm or a local project, this is making additional impact. So this is what we're trying to unpack at Bloom, and it's a learning process.
There are quite a few, and I can see that the chat line, early stage entrepreneurs or early stage businesses delving into this for purpose, sustainability and climate tech space. I did want to ask what the aha moment was for you that you couldn't unsee the climate crisis anymore. And I feel like everyone kind of did that in their introduction, which is fantastic. But Yaz, you've had quite a journey and quite a successful one. What has been, and I'd love every panelist to answer this, but what has been the hardest challenge, the toughest part of your entrepreneurial journey, but also the most rewarding?
Gosh, I think the hardest is, like, jumping ship wasn't hard for me. My aha moment happened when, you know, the world's biggest garage sale, which was a hobby to start with to raise money for charity, I just kept seeing the stuff filling thousands of square meters of warehouse with stuff. And when I could listen, and I didn't realize I was doing customer validation at the time. I love customers, Honestly, if I believe in your product, I could sell anything, because if it was like, I love customers, and they've built our business, listening to them. So long before I was even a founder, customers telling me why they were giving me things, why they were giving away things, long before Marie Kondo was, you know, all about her thing. And so I could hear that people wanted to make impact. People wanted to see the life cycle of their product. People wanted to know where it was going and what it was going to do and whether or not it was going to help somebody, and not in an old model charity way where you throw it in a charity bin, which of course should even not be a word. Who, like, you put shit in a bin. So don't cry when you get shit given to you if it's in a bin. So don't call it a bin, right? So we never called it a bin. We never took shit in. And I'm very authentic as a person and as a founder. And what you see is what you get. So I think that the hardest thing and the easiest thing is staying true to you. Because when you're true to you, I often say I either people love or loathe me. There is no in between. And I can be very positively polarizing. And so along the way, you make a lot of friends, and you definitely need to, as a founder, stay true to who you are and really build that tribe. A tribe was used, or village was talked about before. You cannot do this by yourself. I might be the face of the business, but I am not the reason it's here. There is a whole swarm, scores, hundreds of people who have had their finger in this pie, and they have baked this and created what it is today. And I think backing yourself in and being yourself is both the easiest and hardest thing about starting a company, in particular in an industry that doesn't really have its roots of validation yet validated. So many of us are building things that just sound ridiculous, even more ridiculous when you interlace climate and impact, and you're trying to build a business that isn't all about money, because making money is so easy, but making a difference is so much harder, because it's hard to measure, it's hard to honor, you don't know if what you're doing today is going to pay dividends. So there's a lot more risk. And so I would summarize it in saying it should be easier. And it's why I do panels like this and talk honestly and openly about the journey, because it is effing hard, really hard, harder than it needs to be. But people like us, the crazies, those that kind of get out there and expose themselves, we need to do this because we have to hold hands and do it together. This is a total better together industry. And I think that what I love about this, and our logo is a love heart on purpose. And when I started World's Biggest Garage Sale in 2017, officially as a business, it was less than 9 months. In fact, it was almost 9 months to the day that I said, in a strategy session, oh my God, this is not big enough. Like, world's biggest garage sale is not big enough. We're bigger than this. We're more than this. We were about to sign our first investment. And all I could think of was, it's not going to scale. We need a bigger brand. And so I registered the brand Economy at that time on May 16th, 2018, less than 9 months after starting the company. But what I knew then is that the world wasn't ready for economy. Like, they still scratch their heads at circular economy. So this blended, mashed together word was just going to scare people away even more. So I would just say, like, economy is what we're scaling now, and it will evolve and be the bigger brand that does the work we do. But beyond that, I think the need to believe in yourself, surround yourself with a tribe, clutch onto them like your life depends on it. And that's equally the hardest and easiest thing to do. Relationships is where it's all at. And I said many years ago, love is the next disruptor in business. It's easy for me to say that with a love heart logo, but it is relationships at the core. You don't have customers without relationships. You don't have friends without relationships. You don't have investors. You absolutely need to marry the people and bind to everybody that can honor you and support you. But they're also the people that'll hurt you too. You got to listen to the hard stuff, and don't push those people away who are brave enough to tell you the hard things, because they're usually the best people.
Yeah, good friends don't let friends make bad companies, right? Mick, you at the heart of what you created with Climate Salad was that community, that tribe, that village to help nurture and boost climate tech founders. But you've also founded a few companies yourself. What would you say is the hardest and most rewarding part about founding a business?
I think I definitely enjoy the journey. Like, I think if you're only in it for the money or some big outcome, then I think you will struggle. Like, on average, it's about 8.3 years to build a company to any type of scale and get a return. So you've got to really, really want to do it. And that's you've got to want to do the every day. And I always say pitching to investors is easy. Pitching yourself Monday morning after working Sunday night till 2 o'clock in the morning to get up and get going when you're not being paid, and people are writing crap about you, like there's negatives. You've got to really love, I think, to Yaz's point, solving those problems, and loving the customers. And you're doing multiple hard things at once. If you're doing something truly innovative, like burning a brand new set of technologies, that's really, really hard. And I think it goes to the point about, that, again, climate tech as well. Just building a team and getting some customers, and then that's hard enough. And then getting to some sort of base scale is hard. And then being mid-size is hard. And then being large is hard. Like, it's all the parts are hard. You don't do it alone. And actually, that's the best part for me, is the team. Like, doing it with a team of people that are committed to that problem and want to solve it and care about it more than other things. Like, that's doing it with those people. Like, that's what's special. Like, that never goes away. And whether you succeed or fail, like, I've probably had significantly more failures than most people, because I've tried a lot of businesses, and I enjoy the journey regardless. But I like having those shots on goal. So it's all challenging. And on top of that, we're solving climate problems, which are the whole industry is forming in front of our eyes. Like, there are some things, to Camille's point about more solar panels and more EVs, that I think are good and are just about scale. And there are really hard R&D problems. But the whole industry, like, we have it all the time. SDGs are great, but they don't actually really help you fully understand the impact of a company. Carbon reduction, carbon removal, mitigation, adaptation. Like, there's just a whole currency that we're just coming to grips with, and that's a big opportunity. But it's also, you're building it's like, imagine building a fintech business when there's no such thing as a currency, or dollars, or banking systems, or accounting systems. Like, it's like, that's legitimately what people are trying to do. So, but the really interesting thing is, if we were trying to optimize banking here, like, there wouldn't be the passion. I wouldn't be like, what, for my kids, I just need to optimize banking, please optimize it. But like legitimately, for my kids' generation, like one thing as a parent, you just want to leave the world in a better place. And like, holy shit, I could work my ass off and be a loving, wonderful parent and provide for them. And they may not be able to go outside for half the year. Like, holy crap. So there's a real drive to this. But I think it also really helps the fact that it's business as well. Like, I think you can make a living out of this. I think that's important. That's just financial sustainability, I think, dovetails in with impact sustainability as well.
Steve, I mean, I noticed on your LinkedIn, you have that graph of the changing the temperature over the years. And I think about that with my own kids. It's like the hottest summer we remember growing up is their average. So there are going to be times where we can't go outside. And, we're seeing the climate change unfold in front of our eyes, even again this week. Steve, what about for you? Like, you've had some real success stories there that you've shared with this week as well, the wonderful news. What for you has been maybe even that contrast between rewarding between a successful business that makes money and one that's making a real tangible impact? Wavemaker's ambitious target of reducing 10% of greenhouse gas emissions.
Yeah, I think, I'm just reflecting a little bit on I guess, the points that have just been made by Yaz and Mick. I think, I think the challenges and the rewards of building a business, it's extremely challenging, obviously, clearly, when you've got no brand, no cash, no ability to hire, no brand, no office, no staff. You're building something completely from scratch, and all the challenges around that, and the sheer grit, determination, self-belief that you can do something which is going to make the world a better place, regardless of whether it's, in my case, with property tech, or now with climate tech. You kind of have to have this unswerving self-belief in what you're doing, because you're going to face 99.9% of people just saying you're just completely wasting your time while doing it, and for whatever reason, it's been like this for a while and it will never change. And I guess that belief in that you can make the change. And I reflect a little bit on what he has said. I think for me, the most fundamentally important thing has been just spending time with customers and just listening and talking to customers to really, really understand what their problems are. And through that process, trying to make their life less painful. And as a result, create some value for them and make their life better. And as a result, make some money from that, whether it's fintech, prop tech, or in this case sustainability. I want to make it clear that whilst we're talking about climate change, and fundamentally it's the most important thing, the largest problem that we need to solve, but it's also the biggest opportunity. I think the next wave of unicorns are going to be in this space, because it's a huge opportunity. If we're going to decarbonize every single industry, then there's trillions of dollars are going to be required to make that happen, and companies and governments and consumers and SMEs are going to require help to be able to do that, and therefore provide a huge amount of opportunity. And so the opportunity lies in addressing some of those problems and really understanding what are some of those customer problems that you can address that can solve some of those problems. I think my reflection on last 4 years of working with a whole bunch of founders in this space, and again, it might be a little bit skewed by Southeast Asia, but I think building a business is obviously extremely challenging, and the success rate is extremely low. But I think in the case of climate change, we're faced with even more challenges, because as Mick has pointed out, the whole industry is forming in front of our eyes. So you've got governments starting to develop policies. You've got large enterprises starting to hire their chief sustainability officers and getting sustainability plans out, and some may have been going to science-based targets and slowly moving down that path. But there's a big gap between what they're saying they're doing and actually the reality on the ground in terms of decision making. And so you have just the very, very early stages of the whole industry waking up to this problem, and therefore making some fairly large transformational changes. When you think about a change program in a small company, you can do it in a year. But you think about a change program in the whole of a country or a large enterprise, which is on a global basis, it takes a long, long time. And so we're really right at the cusp and the early stages of that change. And that makes obviously the life of a climate tech founder and startup even more challenging. And so what I've seen in the last 4 years is, kind of two recurring themes over and above the normal challenges of building a startup. First of all, I think is, particularly for B2B businesses, how do you get your first 10 customers? When the enterprises are saying one thing, but on the ground they're not doing anything else, and so, they're not really buying sustainability. So how do you actually transform your proposition from a sustainability proposition into a business proposition around revenue, around customers, around costs, around productivity? And that's the first thing. So you can close the gap between the sustainability talk and actually the action on the ground to help you get those first 10 customers. And once you have the first 10 customers, and your credibility as a organization is a lot better, I think. And then the second thing is what I see a recurring theme is around, yes, there's a growing pool of capital and investors like Wavemaker Impact and others who are, funneling more and more money to the right solutions, and in our case, climate tech solutions from an equity point of view. But what I see is with some of the more mature startups, so they get to sort of Series A, many of them have a hardware component, whether it's a lithium-ion battery, whether it's a hardware, whether it's a solar panel, it's a solar irrigation pump, it's an IoT sensors, which requires a working capital requirement. And one of the things that I'm battling with at the moment, and I had a conversation with one of the senior government people in Singapore about yesterday, is how do we get working capital, so debt finance, to sit alongside equity. So you get the venture kind of investment coming in, it's pre-seed, seed, pre-series A, Series A, and there is at least in Southeast Asia, there's a growing pool of capital there. But that working capital, you don't want to be spending, you raise $5 million for equity, you want to be spending that on buying a whole bunch of kit. That's not the best use of that equity finance. And so the working capital thing is something which personally I'm particularly passionate about trying to solve at the moment, because there is a gap there at the moment, it's underserved.
And Connell, you're riding high off the launch of Bloom, Impact Investing app from last night. What for you are the, if they're different from the other panelists, the most challenging part of being also being a woman entrepreneur in climate tech space, a dramatically underrepresented category globally? From Holland IQ's map of 1,000 climate tech founders, only 9.5% were actually female in the climate tech space. In Climate Salad, our community of Australian and New Zealand founders, we're very proud that we're more than double that, but it's still quite low. But what has been the challenges for you as a female founder, as well as the most rewarding parts?
Yeah, thank you. The hardest was at the beginning, because my company sits in a very nice overlap between clean tech and fintech, and I had to make the right connections in finance. Finance is an incredibly closed, small world, and you cannot possibly enter this space without the right connections. But to get the right connections, you need to put in the work, you need to be trustworthy, you need to add value, and that takes time. So it took me nearly 2 years to build this. And like we said before, it's all about this unwavering faith and focus. So this has been the hardest. I've heard things like, you should go back to your marketing job. What are you doing in this industry? People don't take you seriously. And yes, I've heard so many times, who's your co-founder? Who's your tech co-founder? Do you have a what's your background in finance? But I kept going because I knew that I was onto something, and I knew that the right people would come along the way at some point. And thanks to people like Yas, who are inspiring, I really believe that you cannot be what you cannot see. And seeing people like Yas has been an inspiration, and other women entrepreneurs. So that was definitely the hardest. At the very beginning, when you are nothing, you have no one around you, and somehow you have to be trusted, and you have to convince. And then you convince one person, and then a second person, and then it snowballs. But the very beginning is hard. So that was the hardest. And the best, I guess the best, it's hard. The best is every single moment where you turn a challenge into progress. I think it's the daily magic of waking up and thinking, how on earth am I going to flip this? Like, this is, when you're faced with a blocker so big that it could be the end of your company, and somehow at the end of the week or at the end of the day, you just shift things and you find a way and you keep pushing. And I think that's the best. It's just the best. It's the win.
I think we all need a little bit more Camille in my coffee in the morning, definitely. I actually have a question from the roundtable here. Gordon, if you...
George.
Oh, George, sorry.
That's all right. Hi, guys. Just a quick question. I think it was Steve that said something along the lines of customers don't really care about these climate change issues. And I come from originally a private equity banking background, but I've been in dry cleaning and laundry for the last 20 years. And we invested a lot of money with green solutions and marketed them in various suburbs in Sydney. And it wasn't received as well as it should have been. And the only reason why we kept it up was, number one, we were trying to do the right thing, and the most important characteristic of any good leader is to do the right thing. And secondly, there was an economic benefit because we had solar panels and we were recycling water and that sort of thing. But I'm in fish burners here now a few days a week, working on a laundry startup, and there's of the 300 or 400 founders here, I think half of them are B2C, right? And a lot of them, and we have conversations all the time, and sometimes on this point. And the question is, what sort of energy or resources should us guys who are in the service industry or have these customers? And there is a potential benefit and a marketing play, but I don't know how many resources to put into it. Like, it's important to me, but if it's going to be on deaf ears, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just that how much energy and resources, because I've got one co-founder, a lot of people here are very small teams. So, I just want some advice maybe from you guys on that aspect.
George, I don't want to steal Steve's thunder, but he's on mute and I'm not, so I'm going to jump in.
Go for it.
It's funny, I was at Video Pro for many years. It's a Queensland-based company, and I was it was an amazing job. I was trusted. I was an entrepreneur long before being an entrepreneur was cool. And they used to say to me, treat it like it's your own business. So I got this broad capability that then catapulted my entrepreneurial career because I could trust myself. But the point of my story is all your energy, George, into B2B. So I've built a business which is hilariously so much like Video Pro. It's not funny. And I only realized it recently when I was doing some strategy. They are B2B, B2C, and wholesale, all the same customers that we have at World's Biggest Garage Sale. And as we evolve into our B2B brand will be Seconomy. My biggest customer, Officeworks, were a customer for 3 years. And it was so funny because the story goes, they wanted us to solve a problem for them. And I'm going to plant the seed that when Steve said customers don't care, I'm going to speak on behalf of Officeworks and tell you they do. And they did care. 3 years ago, they wanted a problem solved. And they said, we have so much furniture that is scratched and dented and imperfect, and it's going into landfill, and we're ashamed and embarrassed, and it has to stop. Can you help us? And of course, I was at River City Labs as a startup founder and went, yes, of course, because founders say yes to way too many things. And at the time, it fit exactly what we were doing, but it was a B2B customer opportunity in what was generally a B2C market focus. And I said yes. There was no money on the table. There was so much risk. We were going to take an unknown amount of product from a really big retailer and not really have a business plan on how to do it other than to take the risk. And so I said yes, and we did FIO, figure it out. We FIO'd it, and my team would manually manage what we called surprise chain at the time of products just arriving into a warehouse space, and we had no idea what it was, what its value was, and how we were going to manage it. But we decided that we would trust our client and trust ourselves, and we worked in relationship side by side with Officeworks. And it really is a remarkable example today that transformed our company. We said yes, took all the risk. They took risk. They were taking a punt on a small company. We were taking a punt on a big company. But what we did the entire time, George, is we focused fiercely on delivering what the customer's needs were. We listened to what their needs were. We delivered, we evolved, we delivered, and we kept delivering. And we couldn't always do what they wanted, but we did it with respect for them and their brand. And it was an anonymity client at the time. We couldn't talk to anybody about what we were doing. We had an event. The event happened on the last weekend before COVID shut the world down in 2020. Had I made that event a week later, our business wouldn't be here today. The event proved that 98% of that product could be diverted and redistributed back into the economy. Yes, at a lower price, but with the integrity of the product at the core. And the immediate trust on us delivering for them created the evolution of our relationship, to the point where they recently said, "Oh, when are you coming to Melbourne and Sydney?" And we need to. And I said, "Yeah, we're raising capital. I'm just about to open my round, blah, blah, blah." They're like, "You're opening a round? Can we see your deck?" And I was so embarrassed because, look at me, I even have a reaction, because I'm like, oh my God, they're going to see my deck and their name is throughout my deck. I'm basically pitching my relationship with Officeworks and the evolutionary relationship of the future with Wesfarmers and all of their other brands. And they want to see my deck. So I had to say to the person I was working with, "Oh, yeah, sure, but your logo's throughout the deck." He's like, "That's fine, send the deck." Anyway, a week or two later, here I am pitching to the C-suite of Officeworks, and they invested in our business and are 21% shareholders now. So go all in on your B2B customers. You do not need to know today how much that might be worth to you, and it absolutely could flop. And you might make no money. But if you truly put your customer at the core and build alongside them side by side, I know that it costs Officeworks more money to make some of the choices they made to work with our business along the way. They took risk as much as we did. And that risk has made it valuable, viable, sustainable, and scalable to do the business and the work that we're doing now. And as it continues to evolve, it will be a model that other businesses will be grateful that we both invested in really early. So don't just look at the metrics that matter. Again, I go back to the moments that matter and making those decisions and trusting yourself. And I'll steal Camille's word there, trust. You have to trust yourself and just do what you say you're going to do and maintain integrity. And it will always mean you land on your feet. It might not always feel good, but you'll always land on the ground if you do the right thing.
Trust is such a huge one. I used to work for a sustainability eco label, and it was all about trust. We'd have to dress up sustainability because it wasn't sexy back then as trust. So trust, your customer has to trust you, and maybe they don't. Maybe they didn't care about it then, but I know Kate has put in the chat a Power and the Passion report where it's like 80% of consumers unprompted, their biggest fear or the challenge they have is climate change. So, they do want it. But as Steve said, you do need to be solving a customer problem first. The added bonus is that it's for the planet and it solves problems that are bigger than just the purchasing transaction. We are down to only a few more minutes left of this wonderful panel. Are there any more questions in the room or on the chat? I'll just have a little look through there. Or would anyone else like to add to Yaz's beautifully articulated point about trust?
Question about the two women, because you both said the same thing. I think Yaz and I'm not sure Camille, about where you got pushed back because being told like, okay, you don't belong here, you should be somewhere else. I wonder if that's only said to women because the men didn't say the same thing.
That's a good question.
Yeah, I'm a little bit curious about this because I don't know about Australia, but certainly in Southeast Asia, what I see is, and I'm really encouraged by, is some really, really inspiring women leaders who are taking over the responsibility for chief sustainability officers and sustainability roles in Southeast Asia, which is really, really encouraging and probably not a big surprise, because many of the founders I work with are female founders and they really, really care. And I believe generally probably care more than men. But what I find frustrating, and I'm really keen to understand perspectives on, is, why do we not therefore see more female founders in climate tech, when I see more and more role models from a corporate point of view, and also from a government point of view in the region, but still not necessarily seeing yet in at least Southeast Asia, the female founders come through yet. And it's one of the areas which myself and Marie and Wavemaker Impact are spending some time on at the moment. But I'm really curious to get some perspectives about what we can do more to encourage more female founders to jump on board generally, but also specifically for climate tech.
I think as a female founder, I will be very transparent and honest. First of all, Mick, thank you for putting it out there. The 2 a.m. finish and then the next morning start, that is a real thing. Like I talk about the real reel versus the show reel. I'm on holidays. I actually changed into my shirt for the first time. This is my first holiday in 5 years. I don't take time off. I've not had a day off in 5 years since being a founder, 7 days a week. My family, I never saw my daughters for weeks on end. My husband was the stay-at-home parent. That's probably a big reason why, because a lot of women aren't prepared to make those sacrifices, nor should they. And I'm not claiming that I'm better, because I've always been a full-time worker, and it's just my personality. I own that. So I think it's harder for women, just because we're generally women as a guide, we're generally not prepared to do the 24/7 thing like some are, and some can make it without doing that. But as a founder, I don't think we would be where we are at today if I didn't make all those sacrifices. So those sacrifices have to be made, and not every woman is prepared to pay that price. So
I don't think it's not just prepared though. I think it's being able to do it. Like I think also generalization, but a lot of women have increased roles in the household, and because of useless men sometimes. So I think there is a part of that, and I think that their world is getting to moving slowly to a more balanced place where you can have moderation. And as your business has got to go from a sprint to a marathon.
Yes.
So it won't always be like that, but it is hard. I think we're very lucky at Climate Side that we try very, very hard to have a high proportion of female founders, but we're still only double the terrible rate of 10%. So we're still at 24, 25% or something. And that's a legacy of male dominance for 10,000 years in the world, male dominance in engineering for 70 years, which has led to dominance in investment. All those things are changing, I think, but really slowly and not fast enough. So I had people tell me my ideas were stupid and I was too young and crazy and too ambitious, and that doesn't work in Australia. Lots of things, but I recognise my privilege that I'd never had a question of should a man be running a business, which I recognise that women face that and many others. So a lot more work to be done. Well, it's not going to happen overnight.
No, COVID helped it, I think. I think that the reality is, as a female leader, and Camille, I see you as the same, you're incredibly inspiring as a female entrepreneur. People look up to you. And I think that COVID has helped catapult that. We were all, I joke that it sent us home. Like I used to get sent to my room by my grandma if I did something wrong, and COVID kind of sent us all home. We all had the same level. We all had to work from home. We all had to balance the kids in the background. We all had to do the dishes and sweep the floors. Everybody was in the same position. And what I've seen from my perspective post-COVID is this rise of women and men who are big supporters of that. So I think it's as much about giving women a voice, but for those men and the ambassadors, right? The people like Mick and like Steve and those out there who want to champion women. It's not about the female founder card. It's actually just about championing a fellow founder who's got to take the time, the guts, the energy, the grind and the grit and the grunt and all that hard whether that's a man, a woman, or identifying as something else or someone else. I think we just have to support one another and not necessarily get stuck in the weeds of that negative bias of the attachment of the past. Let's focus on the future. COVID proved to us we could do it. So now let's just keep doing that.
I'll just add one thing. I've noticed in the stats, and that's mostly around VC funding, that there's a real gap around backing solo female founders. And that's an issue. I don't have the solution, but it's more a question mark for anyone who invests out there. And I'm not a solo founder. I used to be, and then my partner came on board, which made us a balanced gender team, which made a big difference, by the way. But I think we can ask ourselves, how can we design a process, a pitching process, a sourcing of deals process that sort of like go around the bias? Because we know that male founders tend to be a bit more confident, tend to have a bigger network, tend to put themselves more in front of the opportunities. So how do we go and be more proactive about unlocking the progress of those female founders? And how can we remove this bias of like, yes, she's a solo founder, but she can surround herself with a good team? And I think we all have these biases. We just need to work on them.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful way to close off this webinar. Gabby, I just wanted to check, were there any questions that I missed in the chat? I've been trying to look at them every now and then, but thank you so much. There were?
No, guys. No. It's
lots
just
of really positive comments.
Yeah, a lot of positive commenters, especially, girls. Thank you so much for all this inspiration quotes. And that's it. Well, guys, I want to really thank you all. I know that Kate was just in the background today here, but we're so happy to have you all. And you are all so inspiring for us, and you always will be. So thank you so much for being part today. And we will be sharing the recording of this session for everyone that signed up today. So don't worry, if you want to rewatch, you can do it, because I will.
Thank you so much. We know, and it's lovely to end on that note of gender equality, SDG 5, one of my favorites, because we know that because of those gender stereotypes, women are more adversely affected by climate change. So it's so good to see those solutions, those heroes in the room, those supporters, those man ambassadors. Is that right? Thanks so much, Kate. Equity 2, your go-to for starting for shareholder equity, ESOP help. Go to Kate. They have an abundance of free resources, and they're always willing to help. So thank you so much, everyone, for the panel. Thanks for giving up your time. And Gabby, come on down to Fishburners.
I will come down right now. I'll see you soon. All right, guys. Thank you.
Thanks,
have a lovely day.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thanks, bye.
Bye-bye.